The silent arrival. The sky was unusually clear that evening, a deep shade of blue that seemed to stretch on forever. Birds soared through the air and the streets were filled with the soft hum of everyday life. It was a quiet town where nothing ever seemed to happen. People went about their business, mothers picking up groceries, children playing in the park, and shopkeepers sweeping their sidewalks. Life was simple, predictable, and peaceful. But that all changed when the sky above them lit up in a flash of bright light. It started as a small streak across the sky, just a shimmer at first like the tail of a shooting star, but it grew larger and brighter as it drew closer. Within moments, the streak exploded into a blinding light, too bright to look at directly. People froze in their tracks, their eyes widening as the strange light expanded and filled the sky. The birds scattered and the air seemed to hum with energy. No one knew what to do or what was happening. The object, whatever it was, had been falling toward the earth, and it wasn't just any ordinary object. It was something much more. As it neared the ground, the blinding light grew stronger, almost like it was coming from within the object itself. It looked like a giant fireball, but unlike anything they had ever seen. It was as if the universe had decided to send a message to their small town, something far beyond their understanding. The townspeople stood motionless, gazing upward with a mix of fear and awe. They knew something dangerous was coming. The object came closer and closer, the rumble of its descent shaking the earth beneath their feet. And then, with a deafening crash, it landed. The ground trembled as the object hit, sending up a cloud of dirt and dust. For a moment, there was only silence. No one moved. Everyone was frozen in place, their hearts pounding in their chests. It wasn't until the dust began to settle that they finally dared to take a step forward, inching closer to the crash site. What they saw when the dust cleared was something none of them could have ever prepared for. Lying on the ground was a figure. No, not a figure, but a creature. At first it was hard to make out the details. The figure was covered in strange metallic-looking armor that shimmered under the fading sunlight. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her features were unlike anything the people of the town had ever seen. Her eyes, however, were the most striking. They were a brilliant shade of green, glowing softly like two precious jewels in the darkening world. The townspeople gathered in a circle around her, but none dared to approach. They stood there staring at her in stunned silence. Some whispered nervously among themselves, too scared to move. Others simply watched wide-eyed, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. A woman? An alien? No one could say for sure. The woman, if that's what she was, lay still on the ground, her chest rising and falling slowly, as though she were breathing. But it was clear she was unconscious. Her arms and legs were twisted awkwardly, as if the impact had taken its toll. No one moved to help her. There was fear in the air. Fear of the unknown, of the impossible. What if she was dangerous? What if she was here to harm them? Alex, a young teen from the town, had been watching the whole event from a distance. He wasn't like the others. While the people around him were too afraid to act, Alex felt something different. He wasn't scared, he was curious. His heart raced, not from fear, but from the sense that something important was happening right in front of him. This was no ordinary day. Pushing past the crowd, Alex walked forward slowly, his eyes never leaving the strange woman lying on the ground. He could hear the whispers of the townspeople behind him, but he ignored them. His mind was focused on one thing only: helping her. He knelt beside her, taking a cautious glance around to see if anyone else was willing to step forward. But no one was. They all stood back, watching from a safe distance. Alex reached out and touched her arm gently. It was cold to the touch, but there was a faint pulse under her skin. She was alive. For a moment he hesitated. What should he do? Should he try to help her? Or should he run back to the safety of the crowd? He glanced around again, meeting the eyes of several townspeople. They looked at him with a mixture of disbelief and fear, as if to say, "What are you doing?" But Alex couldn't just stand there. His instincts pushed him forward. He quickly removed his jacket and placed it under her head to cushion it. He then spoke softly, "Hey, can you hear me?" There was no response, just the quiet sound of her breathing. But Alex didn't give up. He was determined to do something, anything to help her. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his water bottle, uncapping it and gently tilting it toward her lips. She didn't react, but he kept trying. Just as he was about to give up, something unexpected happened. Her eyes fluttered open, the green glow growing stronger as they focused on Alex. She blinked, confused, as if she couldn't understand where she was. "Are you okay?" Alex whispered. The woman didn't answer. Instead, she opened her mouth, but only strange sounds came out. It was a language Alex couldn't understand, but Alex didn't pull back. He stayed close, his hand resting gently on her arm as if to say, "I'm here." He didn't know what was happening, but in that moment he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to leave her. This was just the beginning of something far bigger than he could imagine. The ignored stranger. The following day, the town buzzed with whispers. What happened the night before was still fresh in everyone's minds, like a dream they couldn't shake. The crash site had been cordoned off by authorities, though many of the locals still sneaked glances from afar. The woman, if that's what she was, had been taken into the town's small clinic for examination. But as the hours passed, the story of the alien woman began to shift from curiosity to fear, and the people of the town started to avoid any mention of her. It wasn't long before word spread that the woman, whose name no one knew, wasn't just an alien. She was something much more. Those who had seen her up close had called her beautiful but strange. Her eyes were deep, almost hypnotic. Her skin, soft and pale, almost glowing in the dim light, was unlike anything the people had ever seen. And those strange symbols on her clothes, they didn't belong to any language anyone recognized. The townspeople, however, weren't talking about her like they would a guest. No, they spoke of her like a thing, something foreign and dangerous. There was talk of her being a spy, or worse, a harbinger of something terrible. People couldn't help but fear the unknown. To them, she wasn't a lost soul who needed help. She was an alien, and that was enough to make many of them feel uncomfortable, even threatened. As the day wore on, most of the townspeople ignored the fact that someone unlike them, needed help. The clinic where the woman had been taken had been flooded with government agents and doctors, all examining her as though she were just another piece of strange technology. No one spoke to her directly, and no one even tried to make her feel safe. They didn't trust her, and they didn't even try to understand her. The buzz grew louder, and the town seemed to fall into two groups, those who wanted her gone and those who, like Alex, felt an undeniable need to help. Alex hadn't gone home that day. After his encounter with the alien, he couldn't shake the feeling that she needed him. When he went to bed that night, he found himself tossing and turning. The image of her face, those strange green eyes, kept popping into his mind. He had to know more. He needed to understand who she was, and if no one else would help her, he was determined to do so. The next morning, when the sun had barely risen, Alex found himself walking back to the clinic. His parents had gone off to work, and the rest of the town was still asleep. But Alex couldn't rest. The woman's image haunted him, her eyes full of confusion, desperation, and something more, something ancient. When he arrived at the clinic, he found it eerily quiet. There were no crowds, no reporters, just the distant sound of a few voices from inside. He peeked through the window, his heart racing. The woman was lying on a bed, surrounded by doctors who were speaking in low voices. They seemed focused on their work, oblivious to her presence. But Alex noticed something strange. Even though she was surrounded by people, she was completely alone. No one was speaking to her. No one was trying to comfort her. She was a prisoner in their care, and it was clear that no one saw her as a person. They saw her as an object to be studied. Alex's gaze softened, and he knew then that he couldn't just stand by. He pushed the door open quietly and stepped into the room. The moment the door creaked, the woman's eyes snapped open. She turned her head toward him, and for a brief moment the world around them seemed to slow down. Her gaze was full of recognition, as if she knew exactly who he was. The doctors didn't notice. They were too busy with their notes and instruments. He walked up to her slowly, the soft hum of the machines filling the room. The woman's eyes followed his every movement, her expression calm yet full of fear. Alex could feel it. She was scared, but not of him. She was scared of everything else. The people who had ignored her, the strange world she had crash-landed in, and the knowledge that she was alone. "Hi," Alex said softly, sitting down beside her. He didn't speak too loudly, afraid the doctors might hear him. "I'm Alex. I'm the one who helped you yesterday. Do you remember?" The woman nodded faintly, her lips parting, but no words came out. She seemed to struggle to form them, as if the words were trapped behind her fear. Alex could see the confusion in her eyes. She wasn't trying to say anything threatening. She was simply trying to communicate. But no one had bothered to learn her language. No one had made an effort to understand her. I'm here to help, Alex whispered. I don't know how, but I will. You're not alone. He reached out to her, but the woman recoiled slightly, her body stiffening. Alex pulled his hand back, not wanting to make her feel uncomfortable. Instead, he offered her a small smile, trying to reassure her that he meant no harm. One of the doctors turned toward him, clearly annoyed by his presence. What are you doing here, young man? You shouldn't be in here. Alex's heart raced. The doctor's harsh tone only made him more determined to help her. But he didn't back down. I'm just trying to make sure she's okay, Alex said, his voice steady. The doctor glanced at the woman, then back at Alex. She's fine. Don't worry about her. We're handling things. Alex could see the lie in the doctor's eyes. They weren't handling anything. They weren't treating her like a person. They were treating her like a specimen, and that made Alex furious. But instead of arguing, Alex just gave the doctor one last glance before turning back to the woman. Her eyes were locked on him now, a silent plea for help. He knew it wasn't just a request for medical aid. It was a cry for someone to see her, not as an alien, not as a threat, but as a person who needed compassion. Alex gave her a reassuring nod. I'll be back, he whispered, standing up. And I won't let them treat you like this. I promise. As he left the room, Alex knew this was only the beginning. No one else cared. No one else understood. But he would. And no matter what it took, he would make sure that the woman, the lost alien, would not be ignored any longer. The bonding moment days passed, but the town's unease about the alien woman, whom Alex had learned was named Lyra, only grew stronger. The government had set up a temporary perimeter around the clinic, and rumors of what she was and what she might be capable of spread like wildfire. But despite the fear in the air, Alex felt an odd sense of peace whenever he was near her. He had visited the clinic every day since the first night, sneaking in whenever he could, spending time with Lyra when no one was watching. He wasn't afraid. In fact, he felt more comfortable around her than anyone else. Every time he visited, Lyra's condition seemed to improve. Her color had returned to her skin, and the strange, almost imperceptible tremors in her hands had stopped. She was still weak, but there was a quiet strength in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Each day, Alex sat beside her, offering food, water, and small bits of comfort. He didn't know what else to do. He couldn't speak her language, and the doctors weren't letting him get too close, but he did what he could. Slowly, Lyra seemed to respond to his presence. She would watch him with a gaze that was full of curiosity, as if trying to figure out who this young human was who wasn't afraid to be near her. One evening, after the clinic had closed its doors for the night, Alex snuck in through a side door. The moonlight filtered in through the windows, casting long shadows across the room. Lyra was lying on the bed, her eyes closed as if she were resting, but Alex knew better. She was aware of everything. He sat down quietly by her side, glancing around to make sure no one else was there. Hey, Lyra, Alex whispered, his voice soft. I brought you something. He held up a small notebook and a pencil. It was the best he could do, a way for her to communicate with him, even if it was just through drawing or writing. He didn't know if she understood the idea of writing, but it was a start. Lyra's eyes opened slowly, the faint green glow in them flickering as she turned her gaze toward him. There was something almost comforting about the way she looked at him. Despite the strange appearance and the fear everyone else had of her, Alex could see the depth in her eyes, a sense of loneliness, confusion, and even gratitude. He placed the notebook on her lap, showing her the pencil and making a motion like he was writing. Lyra stared at it for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she took the pencil into her hand with surprising dexterity, and to Alex's amazement began to draw. It wasn't just random scribbles either. The strokes were deliberate, focused. Her hand moved across the page with a precision that suggested she had done this before. The lines she drew were intricate, symbols, shapes, patterns that seemed familiar but foreign all at once. Alex watched in awe, his heart pounding. What was she trying to tell him? When she finished, she held the notebook up, offering it to him with a slight tilt of her head. Alex took it in his hands, his fingers trembling slightly as he looked at the drawing. It wasn't a picture. It was a map, one that looked like a star chart. Alex recognized a few of the constellations, but many of the stars were arranged differently than anything he had seen. Some of them were connected by lines forming shapes he couldn't even begin to understand, and in the center there was a symbol. one that looked like an ancient sigil, almost glowing with an otherworldly light. Where is this from? Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lyra didn't respond with words. Instead, she gave him a look, an almost sorrowful glance that seemed to say, "You'll understand in time." Alex couldn't tear his eyes away from the map. He traced the lines with his finger, feeling the strange energy coming off the page. For the first time since he met Lyra, he felt a deeper connection to her. This wasn't just a lost alien. This was someone with a history, someone with a purpose, someone who had a story to tell, a story that he was meant to understand. Over the next few days, their bond continued to grow. Alex returned to the clinic every night, and Lyra's strength slowly increased. She still couldn't speak much, but she would communicate with him through gestures and the symbols she drew. Alex learned to understand her language, even if it was a silent one. Each time they communicated, it felt like they were unlocking a secret, revealing a small piece of the puzzle. One evening, as Alex sat by her side, Lyra's eyes shifted toward the window. He followed her gaze and saw the silhouette of a dark figure standing outside. A chill ran down his spine. He had seen that figure before. It was one of the government agents who had been assigned to guard the clinic. "Lyra," Alex whispered urgently, his voice barely audible. "We have to be careful. They're watching us." Lyra's eyes flickered with an emotion Alex couldn't quite read. Fear? Worry? Perhaps both. She didn't respond immediately, but her gaze turned to the drawing she had made, the star chart. Then she looked back at Alex, nodding slowly. It was as if she was saying, "This is just the beginning." The room was heavy with silence. Alex's mind raced as he realized what he had already suspected. The world was about to change. His connection with Lyra wasn't just a chance encounter. It was the start of something bigger. Something that could affect not just their town, but the entire planet. But the government wasn't the only threat. As Alex glanced back at the drawing, something deep within him told him that more was coming. Something far more dangerous, and he didn't know if he was ready for it, but he had to be. For Lyra, for the future, and for the unknown journey that lay ahead. Secrets unveiled, the days that followed were filled with tension and confusion, not just for Alex, but for Lyra as well. She had begun to trust him, but the questions that plagued both of them only grew more intense. The star map she had drawn, the strange symbols and the mysterious sigil at its center, it all pointed to something far greater than either of them could have imagined. Alex had begun to see the hints of something hidden deep inside her, something she had yet to fully reveal. But every time he thought he understood her, Lyra would retreat into silence as though she was afraid to say too much. The world outside was beginning to take notice. Reports had circulated far beyond the small town, and soon the presence of a lost alien was no longer a local mystery. Government officials, scientists, and even military personnel began showing up at the clinic. Lyra was no longer just a sick woman who had crash-landed from the stars. To the outside world, she had become a prize, a puzzle to be solved, a secret to be uncovered. The authorities tightened their grip around her. The hospital room was filled with guards now, and Alex was no longer able to visit her freely. He had to sneak in through back doors and hidden hallways, avoiding the prying eyes of the people who saw Lyra as a threat, rather than someone in need of help. Each time Alex managed to find his way to her side, he could feel the pressure growing, both in the air around them and within his own chest. One evening, after slipping into the clinic, Alex found Lyra staring out of the window. Her gaze was distant, her expression unreadable. The glowing green of her eyes seemed dimmer now, and for the first time Alex noticed a hint of sadness in her. She had always been so calm, so controlled, but now she seemed lost. More than just the alien who had arrived on Earth. More than just a fugitive. She seemed like someone who was carrying the weight of the universe on her shoulders. "Lyra," Alex whispered, stepping closer. "You've been quiet. What's wrong?" Lyra didn't turn to him right away. Instead, she stared at the stars in the sky beyond the window. Her fingers twitched slightly, as if she were trying to grasp something far away. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, she spoke. Her voice was soft but filled with an intensity Alex had never heard before. "I am not just an alien," she said, her words trembling slightly. "I am the last of my kind." Alex felt a chill run through him as the weight of her words sank in. The last of her kind? He had never thought of it that way. He had assumed that there were other aliens out there, other races or beings like Lyra. But the way she said it, the pain in her voice, it was clear she carried a heavy burden. "What do you mean?" Alex asked, his voice barely a whisper. Lyra turned to him then, her eyes locking with his. There was a sadness there, yes, but also something else, something that seemed like desperation. She looked at him as though she was weighing whether or not to trust him with the truth. Finally, after a long pause, she spoke again. "My people, my planet was destroyed," she said, her voice shaking, "by the same forces that are after me now." Alex's heart raced. Destroyed? How? Lyra lowered her gaze, her hands trembling slightly. The enemy. They came in the night. They were merciless. No warning, no negotiation. They attacked us with weapons unlike anything we've ever seen. Our planet was defenseless. I was sent to Earth to find refuge. To escape. Alex took a step closer, his mind racing with the implications. Who are these enemies? And why are they after you? Lyra's eyes filled with pain, but she didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached for the notebook she had drawn in earlier, the one that Alex had now come to see as a symbol of her trust. With trembling hands, she began to draw once more. The lines were sharp, precise, and yet filled with a sense of urgency. When she finished, she pushed the notebook toward Alex, showing him another map. This one more complex than the first. But it wasn't a map of stars this time. It was a map of planets. And at the center of the diagram was a symbol Alex immediately recognized. The same one from the first drawing, the same glowing sigil. But this time the symbol was surrounded by what looked like an explosion, a burst of energy. Lyra pointed to the symbol. "This is the artifact," she said softly. "It holds the power to destroy or save worlds. It was created by my ancestors, a gift meant to protect us, but in the wrong hands it can be a weapon of unimaginable destruction." Alex felt a lump form in his throat. The artifact? But why didn't you tell me before? Why didn't you tell anyone? Lyra closed her eyes, her face etched with sorrow. "Because I didn't want to burden you with it. I didn't want you to know that by helping me, you are also helping them. The enemies who destroyed my world, they know about the artifact. They've been hunting it for centuries, and now they know I have it." Alex's mind reeled. The artifact, the weapon that could destroy everything. He had suspected there was something more to Lyra, something bigger than a lost alien, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and trust. "I need your help, Alex. Without you, I cannot protect it. I cannot stop them." Alex's breath caught in his chest. This wasn't just about a lost alien anymore. This wasn't just about hiding or running away. This was about the fate of the entire world, and possibly the entire universe. And here he was, a teen from a small town being asked to help her, to protect the one thing that could either save or destroy everything. "I won't leave you," Alex said, his voice steady but full of determination. "I'll help you, whatever it takes." Lyra gave him a small, grateful smile, but the sadness never left her eyes. "Thank you. But we don't have much time. They're coming." As she spoke those words, Alex's thoughts began to race. The enemies were closing in. They weren't just coming for Lyra, they were coming for the artifact. And once they found it, everything would change. He wasn't just fighting for Lyra anymore. He was fighting for the future of everything he knew. The enemy approaches. The tension in the small town had reached a boiling point. What started as a quiet, isolated incident, the crash of an alien spacecraft, was quickly spiraling into something much larger. The authorities had sealed off the area around the clinic where Lyra was being held, but the whispers in town were growing louder. People began to talk openly about the government's involvement, about the secretive military patrols, and the increasing number of black SUVs that seemed to drive by the clinic day and night. But what no one knew except for Alex was that the real danger had not yet arrived. Lyra had tried to warn him. She had told him over and over that the enemies who destroyed her world were coming, that they were relentless and cunning. But Alex had never truly understood the gravity of her words until the first sign appeared. It was a cold, foggy morning when Alex saw it. He had been visiting Lyra in secret, sneaking into the clinic through the back door as usual. It was early. Too early for anyone to be awake, but not too early for danger to arrive. As Alex made his way down the hallway, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The usual buzz of clinic staff, The beeping of medical machines, it all seemed unnaturally still. The silence was oppressive, a heavy weight in the air that made his chest tighten with unease. When he reached the room where Lyra was being kept, the door was ajar. He pushed it open cautiously, stepping inside, but what he saw made his blood run cold. Lyra was standing by the window, staring out at the bleak morning sky, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. But she wasn't alone. Two men, military men by the look of their uniforms, were standing by the door. They were speaking in low, urgent tones, completely unaware that Alex had entered. "She's awake," one of them said, his voice deep and gravelly, "and if the reports are accurate, she's the key to finding the artifact." "I don't like this," the other soldier replied, his voice tinged with suspicion. "If the government finds out about her abilities, well, they won't stop until they have control over her." Alex froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew exactly what they were talking about. The artifact, the one Lyra had been so secretive about, the one that held the power to either save or destroy worlds. But what did they mean by her abilities? Was there something more to Lyra than she had told him? Before Alex could react, Lyra turned around. Her eyes met his, and he saw the same sadness and fear he had seen in them before, but now it was mixed with something else. Something deeper, a quiet resolve. The soldiers noticed Alex then, and their eyes narrowed. They didn't seem surprised that he was there, but there was a certain hostility in their gaze. As if they knew exactly who he was. "What's he doing here?" one of them demanded, taking a step forward. Lyra stepped between Alex and the soldiers, her voice sharp and commanding. "He's with me." The soldiers hesitated. "You've been speaking to him, haven't you?" "Communicating," one of them said, his eyes flicking nervously from Lyra to Alex. "Why?" Lyra didn't answer right away. Instead, she took a step back, her eyes flicking to the map she had drawn. The one with the star systems, the planets, and the glowing sigil. She had been keeping it hidden, but Alex could tell that it meant something to her, something personal. "It's not your concern," she finally said, her voice steady, but there was a fire in her eyes, a quiet rage that Alex had never seen before. The soldiers exchanged a glance, and in that moment, Alex realized that things were worse than he had imagined. They weren't just here to protect her or even to study her. They were here to control her, to use her and the artifact for their own gain. "Let's go," one of the soldiers said, his tone clipped. "We've been given orders. We're taking her with us." "No," Lyra said, her voice low but filled with undeniable strength. "You're not taking me anywhere." The room seemed to pulse with tension. The soldiers moved toward her, but before they could make another move, Lyra raised her hand. A faint green light glowed around her fingertips, and the air seemed to shift, becoming charged with energy. The soldiers stumbled back, their eyes wide with shock. They had expected her to be weak, disoriented, easy to control. But they had underestimated her. The soldiers hesitated for a moment, as if reconsidering their orders. But before they could act, a loud, thunderous crash echoed from outside. The ground beneath their feet trembled. The walls shook. The soldiers turned, their eyes wide with panic. They knew what that sound meant. It wasn't just a crash, it was the arrival of something much worse. Something far more dangerous than the military had anticipated. Lyra's eyes locked with Alex's, and for the first time, Alex saw the full weight of the situation in her gaze. She wasn't just running from her past. She wasn't just hiding. She was fighting for her life and for the future of Earth itself. "They're here," Lyra whispered. Before Alex could respond, the room filled with the deafening sound of something approaching. Outside, a fleet of black ships appeared in the sky, their sleek, menacing shapes casting long shadows over the town. The air was thick with the hum of energy, and the soldiers were no longer focused on Lyra. They were focused on the sky, knowing that their reinforcements were here. The enemy had arrived, and the time for running was over. Lyra turned to Alex, her expression hardening. "It's time. We need to go now." Alex's heart raced as he realized the gravity of the situation. The enemy wasn't just a group of soldiers. They were a full-scale invasion force, and they were coming for the artifact. And for Lyra. As the military soldiers rushed to defend the clinic, Alex and Lyra made their way out the back. They didn't have time to think. They didn't have time for plans or strategies. They had to move, fast, before the enemy reached them. The town's peaceful, quiet existence was shattered forever, As Lyra and Alex fled, the sound of the ships overhead grew louder, and Alex understood that the battle was no longer just for survival. It was for the fate of the world itself. The final stand. The sun had barely begun to rise over the small town, casting an eerie orange glow across the streets. Alex and Lyra stood in the shadows of a dilapidated warehouse on the outskirts of the town, far from the clinic where she had been kept hidden. The night before, everything had changed. The air was heavy, thick with the tension of impending disaster, and the ground still vibrated from the arrival of the enemy fleet. The black ships hovered above the town, their engines humming with a sinister power that made the hairs on the back of Alex's neck stand on end. Lyra's face was as pale as the moonlight, but there was something about the way she stood, her hands clenched into fists, that told Alex she wasn't ready to give up. If anything, the arrival of the enemy had only sparked something in her, a fire that burned deeper than he had ever seen before. She had been running for so long, hiding from her past, but now she was ready to face it. And Alex, despite his fear, knew that he would face it with her. "Alex," Lyra said, her voice steady but filled with urgency, "they're not just here for the artifact. They're here for everything I've kept hidden, everything that could change the balance of power across the universe." Alex swallowed hard, his throat dry. He had always known that the artifact was important, but now the truth was clearer than ever. This wasn't just about an alien artifact. This was about the future of not only their world, but countless others. Lyra wasn't just a fugitive anymore. She was a key player in an intergalactic struggle, one that was unfolding right before his eyes. And with each passing moment, the stakes grew higher. The wind picked up, howling through the empty streets, carrying with it the distant sound of marching footsteps. Alex's heart raced as he glanced over at Lyra, whose eyes were fixed on the horizon. She knew what was coming, and so did he. "Do you trust me?" Lyra asked suddenly, her gaze locking with his. There was a deep intensity in her eyes, a quiet strength that made Alex's heart skip a beat. "Of course I do," Alex replied without hesitation, even though the fear in his chest made his voice tremble. "I'll always trust you." Lyra nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. She was still scared, but she was determined. She had to be. They didn't have much time left. The enemy was closing in, their ships hovering in the air like vultures circling their prey. Their forces were vast, far larger than anything Alex had ever seen. It wasn't just a military operation, it was an invasion, a full-scale assault. And the moment they landed, everything would be destroyed. But Lyra wasn't going to let that happen. Not if she could help it. "We need to get to the artifact before they do," she said, her voice unwavering. "It's the only way to stop them." Alex nodded. "Where is it? How do we find it?" Lyra's eyes softened, but there was a shadow of sadness behind them. "It's hidden, buried beneath the ruins of my planet. When my people were attacked, we hid it to protect it. But it's more than just an object. It's a part of me, a part of my history, and if it falls into the wrong hands, it will be used to destroy everything." Alex didn't fully understand, but he didn't need to. He could see the truth in Lyra's eyes. This wasn't just a fight for survival. This was a fight for the very soul of the universe. And Alex knew without a doubt that he was meant to help her. A loud explosion rocked the ground beneath them, sending a shockwave through the air. The enemy had landed. They were here. Alex's heart skipped a beat as he heard the unmistakable sound of marching boots. The enemy was closing in, their soldiers coming from all sides. There was no turning back now. Lyra turned to face him, her expression hardening. "We don't have much time. We have to move now." Alex didn't need any further encouragement. He followed Lyra through the narrow streets, their footsteps echoing in the quiet morning air. They moved quickly, darting from shadow to shadow, avoiding the patrols that had already begun to search the area. Lyra led him with a certainty that surprised him. She knew exactly where she was going. As they neared an old abandoned building on the outskirts of town, Lyra stopped suddenly. She looked up at the structure with a mixture of regret and determination. "This is it," she said quietly. "The artifact is buried beneath this place. It's the only way to stop them." Alex swallowed hard, his throat dry with fear. He looked around, his eyes searching for any signs of the enemy. They were getting closer. Lyra's hand tightened around his, her grip firm but comforting. "It's not just the artifact we need to protect," she said, her voice soft. "It's the knowledge that comes with it, the power to change everything." And if they take it, there's no going back. With that, Lyra led him into the building, her steps light but determined. The inside was dark, the walls crumbling with age, and the air was thick with dust. But Lyra moved forward with purpose, guiding Alex through the ruins of her past. Every step seemed to bring them closer to something ancient, something powerful. Finally, they reached a small chamber deep beneath the building. The walls were covered in strange symbols, similar to the ones Lyra had drawn for Alex. At the center of the room was a large stone pedestal, and on top of it rested the artifact, glowing with a faint, otherworldly light. Alex felt his breath catch in his throat as he approached the pedestal. The artifact was beautiful. Its surface was smooth and polished, with intricate designs that seemed to shift and change as the light touched them. It pulsed with energy, as though it was alive, waiting to be awakened. Lyra stepped forward, her hands trembling as she reached for the artifact. "This is it," she whispered. "This is what they've been after." Just as her fingers brushed the surface of the artifact, a loud crash echoed through the building. The enemy had found them. "They're here," Lyra said, her voice filled with urgency. "We have to leave, now!" Before Alex could react, the room was filled with a blinding light, and the ground beneath them began to shake. The walls cracked, the ceiling groaned with the weight of the destruction. The time for running was over. Lyra grabbed the artifact and held it close to her chest, her eyes glowing with a fierce determination. "We're not running anymore," she said, her voice steady. "This is the final stand. We fight." And as the enemy stormed into the chamber, ready to take the artifact by force, Alex realized the truth. The battle was no longer about survival. It was about something much bigger, about the future of everything they knew. It was a battle for the fate of the universe,